What's up? Welcome in. Hoge Jahns with you with an early, quickie episode this week because of the big news that the Bears are finalizing the hiring of Shane Waldron as their next offensive coordinator. A guy we've talked a lot about. And Johns, we thought it'd be smart to bring in our guy, Mike Dugar, who covers the Seahawks out in Seattle for The Athletic, and get the perspective from Mike right away on the OC that we're going to be interviewing here weekly come the regular season. John's, any initial thoughts, though, before we jump in here?
Like, my first reaction is that I like it. I like that he actually coached for Pete Carroll, that he started his career with Bill Belichick. I like that he's from the McVay tree, was there when things got started with Jared Goff right away in 2017. So there's a lot of things to like about it, especially when you compare him against Luke Getsy, 3 years of play calling experience in the NFL. Luke Getsy didn't have any of that. And he's worked with different quarterbacks. Russell Wilson, Geno Smith, Kirk Cousins, Jared Goff. Again, Luke Getsy only had Aaron Rodgers really on his resume. So as far as my initial reaction, I like it because he's different than his predecessor.
Mike does a great job covering the Seahawks out in Seattle. You should follow him on Twitter at Mike Dugar. And Mike, look, I always maintain that there's maybe 5 NFL fan bases who actually like their offensive coordinator. So I'm trying not to take too seriously some of the angst or warnings that are coming out from on social media right now from Seahawks fans. But man, you've been there. You tell us what's it been like, the job that Shane Waldron did over the last 3 seasons in Seattle.
Yeah, I do think there's a very noticeable divide or between like how Shane is perceived outside of Seattle versus what the fans and even some local media think of him. Like he does design some good stuff. But it's for me when I'm assessing a coordinator, like Adam just ran through, like, okay, here's his resume. I start there, it's his background. And the other thing I look at is situational stuff. Like, how's your team on third down? How's your team in the red zone? How's your team in 2 minute? Situational doesn't usually include like opening script, but I'm usually curious about that too. Shane, really good opening script guy. I don't know his numbers off the top of my head, but I'd probably put those against most OCs in terms of first 15 or whatever. After that, though, when you talk about third down, red zone, that's why you're seeing all that social media pushback from people in Seattle. They're really tired of just going 3 and out, really tired of not scoring in the red zone, really tired of being like one of the worst third down teams in the league, which I think they were again this year. And the situational stuff, that's what wins and loses your games. Can you execute in 2 minute? Can you stay on the field in third down? And when you get in the red zone, do you get touchdowns? It's usually things that keep people employed. You're bad at those things, you usually don't get promotions, generally speaking. So like when I look at Shane or any OC, that's where I'm starting at. He was really inconsistent in that regard. There were some days they were just masterful on third down. An example, a primetime example would be when they played the Cowboys this year, week 13, Thursday Night Football. I think they were like 9 of 14, killing it. First third down is DK beats Deron Bland for like a 1,000,000-yard touchdown, and they ended up being really good on third down the rest of the game. But even in that game was another good example of Shane. They failed on third down and fourth down multiple times with a chance to win the game. And on the last play of the game, they run a play for DJ Dallas. And then people in Chicago might be like, "Who is that?" Right? That's
Was
because
just thinking that.
he's their
I know
third
DJ
string
Dallas,
running back. Like,
Miami.
yeah, he went to Miami, their third string running back. He's actually boys with Travis Homer, former Seahawk. They're really tight. But like the idea of having DK Metcalf and Noah Fant and Tyler Lockett and Jackson Smith and Jigba and even Ken Walker, or no, I don't think he played, but Zach Charbonnet. And with the game on the line on like fourth and whatever it was, you're running a play that is for DJ and also expects Michael Parsons to come unblocked, and you don't do anything about it. Right? That's that whole game. If Bears fans are looking for a game to kind of analyze Shane, that one's a really good one. Just it's him in a nutshell. It was really good in some spots, but it was really bad in some spots, some critical spots as well.
Can you take us back to his hiring, the start? Because didn't Russell Wilson kind of play a role in his arrival? Like he was involved in the search that eventually landed Waldron, correct?
Yeah, that was a weird time because Brian Schottenheimer didn't get fired for like because he was bad at his job. They had like 3 top 10 offenses in a row, and that was the end of the let Russ cook time that kind of Shane came into. And Shoddy basically got fired because he was stuck in a weird spot. He was just like, yeah, here's how I want to get down. Here's how Russ would like to get down. And then Pete's like, well, here's how I want to get down. So you're gone. We're keeping Russ, and we're going to find a new guy. And Russ was at like, he really wanted more control over the situation. He was tired of not winning championships. He felt like there were other circumstances besides his own play impacting that. So he was like, let me help pick the next dude if you guys are going to be firing coordinators that I like. So Shane was like brought into like a really disruptive household. And now we see all this reporting later that shows how like toxic that situation was. So yeah, Russ was involved. I don't know if he like picked, I don't know what round he got in on. Like, I think they had a casted a pretty wide net, got down to about 3. I think maybe the Packers pass game coordinator at the time was involved as well. And then I think Russ was involved in like when they got down to the final 3 and really like Shane. I think Russ actually, I could find the transcript or something, but I think Russ was telling us that he like was quizzing Shane or like having Shane call some plays. It's like, hey, call this game. Was like really interviewing him. He was really involved in the process, all for that to only last for a year. So yeah, I think Russ was really heavily involved, really liked Shane, spoke highly of him, liked his ideas. You could kind of tell that he had an identity that Russ liked. Russ liked some of the things that you guys are mentioning. He came from the McVay tree. He had worked with Goff. He had worked with some other quarterbacks too. The Rams system had been kicking Seattle's butt for a while. So they were like, anybody from that, give us the secret sauce. You know, Russ was really big on that. It didn't come to fruition like they wanted, but yeah, Russ was pretty supportive of that hire in real time.
So I don't know if you know this, but here in Chicago, you have to be in one of 2 camps. You have to pick one of the 2 camps. You can't cross over at all. You either got to be Team Caleb Williams or Team Justin Fields. So the Team Justin Fields people, I think they're excited because of what Geno Smith has done the last couple of years here. How much credit does Shane Waldron deserve for whatever type of renaissance Geno's been able to have?
It's a good question. If I had to chart it out or use like a pie, I don't think Shane slice would be super big, just because I think it's really more of a credit to Geno as a person. Like when I did a feature story on Geno last year around the time he made the Pro Bowl, and I was going back and reading some of his like old quotes from the Jets, and like some of it was like, oh man, this dude's young and immature, right? Like he needed to go somewhere else to flourish. But you see, Geno called himself a Pro Bowl caliber quarterback in like 2014. And it was viewed as such like an inflammatory comment that I think like Rex Ryan had to come out and apologize for it or walk it back. That's how crazy that was up there in New York. But like that, you could see Geno always believed in himself. Even when he got to start, he broke Eli Manning's starting streak. It was like 200 plus games in a row, right? And the coach who broke the streak for him ended up getting fired. But Geno, he wasn't apologetic of like, oh, cool, Eli did his thing, but like, I'm ready now. I'm ready to play. I'm ready to play instead of this future Hall of Famer. Like, you guys love him here, but like, I'm Geno. I'm ready to rock. He's always been super confident. He put up a ton of numbers at West Virginia. He was a really good high school prospect in South Florida, where they produce all of the good high school prospects, it seems. So Geno never thought that he wasn't the guy. You know, I think Geno signed with Rock Nation out of the draft and was like the quarterback of the Jets, right? So, I mean, you posing with Jay-Z your first couple of years in the league, you're at the mountaintop. And Geno mentally never left the mountaintop. So when he got a chance to start here in Seattle, he was just like, yeah, I've been wanting to take Russ's job. See ya, lay you, Russ, but I'm ready. So he was one of those stay ready so you didn't have to get ready type of guys. And I think that, if again in the pie chart, that's probably like 70% of it for me from some seeing. Not to say Shane did nothing, but Geno deserves a lot of credit for that self-belief. And that's why his story was so inspiring, because it was a testament to his own faith in himself. And then the rest of the pie chart I'll probably give to Pete Carroll, who just gets guys to believe in themselves in a way that I don't think we've seen from any coach, really. Like Pete gets the best out of dudes, everyone from the long snapper to the quarterback. So I probably give him another like 20% of that. And then Shane's probably lumped in there with the rest, like having a good supporting cast. Throwing the DK Metcalf makes anybody's job easier. Throwing the Tyler Lockett makes anybody's job easier. Geno had a decent line that the last couple of years, at least at tackle. So I think Shane played a part of it. But I'm not gonna lie, I think Geno overcame his coordinator in some cases, particularly last year. I think last year's third down stuff was a mess. And Geno was doing damage control more than anything, at least in my opinion.
So then, like, take us through this year when the numbers aren't the same. He goes from leading the league in completion percentage to not having a Pro Bowl year as he did the year before. Like, where do the struggles lie? Were Shane Waldron and Geno Smith not working well together? Because we saw that kind of play out here with Luke Getsy and Justin Fields. So maybe take us through the ups and downs of this past season.
That's a good question too. Geno was probably the biggest Shane supporter I came across. Like on off the record, like Geno was big Shane guy. So that was not the issue. Everyone else wasn't on the same page. We get mixed results on him. Some people loved him like Geno did. Some people were like, he's okay. Like he does some good stuff here and there, but like I was asking guys who like it was their job to get the ball, so I could see why they were frustrated. There were some guys who had real career lows playing with Shane last year, some tight ends, some receivers, even a guy like DJ Dallas. Like I think he ran the ball like 10 times, all year. That's not a lot for a running back. Some guys can get that on one drive. So there was some mixed results in there. I think Geno was very supportive of him, always was publicly, privately. So I think the issues were more so. This is where I'll cut Shane a little slack. I don't know how many iterations of the O-line the Seahawks had starting this year, but it was well into the double digits. Like it was double digits by like week 11, which is bad. It's very bad. And that lack of continuity was very hard to coach with. And I imagine it was very hard to practice with too. It's one thing if you're like your right tackle blows his ACL, right? Because then you just know he blew his ACL. But if like he's got a gimpy knee and he's limited at practice, so your right guard rolls his ankle or something like that, then you're just like, okay, will I have him? Will I not? And the plans kind of reflected that. Some games, like when they played Detroit, they came out thinking we can't block Aiden Hutchinson, so let's plan accordingly. Let's give our guys help. We're missing our 2 tackles to go beat Detroit. They go out with that same type of plan against like the Giants. Oh, we can block these guys. Well, then Kayvon Thibodeau wrecks the whole plan, and they scored like 10 points on offense or something like that. So not knowing what he was going to get out of his O-line led to a lot of inconsistency, I think, on Shane's part. Because imagine that as the OC. You're like, all right, cool. How do I call the game thinking we can block these guys, or do I call the game thinking we can't? In some games, you could tell he went in there thinking, yeah, we could block these guys. And then Trey Hendrickson just blows them to smithereens in Cincinnati. In some games, he gives guys help, like on a Micah Parsons or some of the games against the Niners. Like, hey, we're not going to be able to block Bosa, so let's adjust accordingly. That was very tough on Shane, and I think that really impacted their situational stuff. The Seahawks had stretches where they were just awful in the red zone, awful on third downs. I think they ended the year as 30th in third downs. And I think that was a big part of it because when you don't know what you're going to get up front, it's hard. Like, do we leave our back in there? Do we max protect? Do we slide in this way? What are we going to do? And even if we have a plan, do they hold up? Does our right guard just get walked back into Geno? We're playing 41-year-old Jason Peters. Is he going to hold up this week? Right. So I think Shane dealt with all of that on top of some inconsistency from his quarterback and his run game. And it was just hard. Like the product was not, I'm not going to lie, I'm kind of surprised the Bears were after him so tough because the product, if you just go by last year, it was not get a promotion worthy. It was like, if the new guy comes, we'll retain you. But it didn't like blow me out of the water. You know what I mean?
So why do you think the outside perception seems to be so different? Because it was like, I'm not gonna lie to you, the moment, and I don't think it's just here in Chicago either. There's been some, some national hype around him. The moment we found out Pete Carroll, was getting bumped up, and there was gonna be some coaching changes there in Seattle, almost instantly it was like, oh, Shane Waldron would be a perfect fit for what the Bears are trying to do.
Yeah, no, I was wondering that earlier in the year too. I think it was like around like week 7 or something. There was a YouTube video, it was like an hour long. It was like the headlines like Shane Waldron's the most underrated play caller in the league right now. And it was incredible. I think it was like Josh McCown breaking it down. So I didn't want to like say Josh McCown didn't know what he was talking about, but I watched the whole thing and I was like, wow, this is really fascinating. Like I don't think Shane's bad. I think he's like okay. And I think he's like a decent coordinator. You give him good players, you'll get like a good offense. The Seahawks offense was not bad this year. It was very good. It was like top 15, top 10, and like some really good efficiency stuff. But when I'm looking at some of the outside perception, I'm like, all right. So you guys, you don't care about situational football then. Because you want to talk early downs, Shane's a master. That's probably what it is. Because on early downs, Shane will give you some stuff. Like I think he's a former tight end coach. I think that's his positional background. And you can tell with some of the usage of it. They do some like funky formations. They're really good with 13 personnel, 12 personnel. Seahawks are one of the best 12 and 13 personnel teams in 2022. So I think that's the conclusion. I'd love to just ask Josh McCown, I guess, but that's one of the things I kind of concluded, like, oh, okay, people really are loving this early down stuff, and I think that's important. That's half the damn game is what you can do on first and second down. Because the Seahawks, if you just look at those splits, a really good team, really efficient, run the ball well, good balance between run and pass. Shane figured out how to run screens. I mean, they hadn't run screens well in Seattle since the Kingdom was a thing. So it had been a while. So Shane does some good stuff. I won't act like he's terrible, but I do think it's when he's probably in one of those situations where if you go in thinking in either direction, if you want your bias confirmed, you can find it in either direction when you watch a Shane Waldron offense. You go in thinking, oh man, this guy's a genius. Look at this formation. Look how they set this up. Like, you could do that. I could do that. I could do that right now. Pick plays and designs and like, oh, look how they came back to that. Then if I wanted to be pessimist, I'd be like, oh, look at all these bad things. So I really think it's kind of just eye of the beholder situation. You guys will see that. You'll see some games where Shane kills it. And you'll see some games where, and the talk radio in Chicago that next morning is going to be nasty for him. You can already see it. So yeah, I really think that focus on early downs and some of the work that he did there is probably why a lot of people are high on him.
How did he get along with Pete Carroll? Because Matt Eberflus, another defensive-minded head coach, I imagine Pete had a strong influence on the way things were going to be run by Shane to some extent, right?
Oh yeah. Pete, for what it's worth, Pete's pretty hands off from what I've heard on the coordinators, particularly on game day. I think he's learned to trial by fire there of being too hands on and it's just messing up the guy. And he's learned from being a coordinator with the coach in his ear, like, man, dude, leave me alone. I'm trying to call the plays. Like, let me rock. So he's been good with that on game day. He'll butt in every now and again, but it sounds like it's more so like a mentality or something like, hey, let's get back to the run game. He's not calling like, all right, we're gonna run H pivot here or whatever. Sounds like he's more like, hey man, we ain't got let's bleed clock here, or let's take a shot here. Just a little stuff like that. I'm not in the headsets, but that's what the sense that I get. And having that autonomy is good. And I was always curious how much he had, because then I can assess him. Not necessarily like, all right, do I think that your boss is in your ear while you're trying to work? Because that would suck for any of us, let alone guys in these like high stressful situations like an OC at the NFL level. So yeah, I get the sense that the pairing worked well. I do think last year though was really frustrating. I don't know if it led to any like toxic stuff behind the scenes. I have no reporting on that, but I do know this is probably the first time since I've been covering Pete, which is since 2017, that Pete basically came out and said, we're not using our guys right. This was after the Dallas game, I want to say. Which again, see, that's a good example of a good Shane game and a bad Shane game all in one. They lost, and Pete was like, "Yeah, we're not using our guys right. Like, I use Jackson Smith and Jigba more. Like, we gotta get our tight ends more involved." Usually, your coach is just like, "Let's run the ball more," right? Every coach thinks that, but Pete was very specifically like, "Yeah, we need to use JSN differently. Our tight ends aren't involved enough. We got to be better on third down." I hadn't heard Pete do that in years. Never really heard him do that, even when the offense stunk in the past. So that was very interesting to see around like December, late November, where Pete to be like, yeah, we have all these talented dudes and we're not maximizing them. We need to maximize them. When I heard Pete say that, that was a huge indictment of the OC to me.
Yeah.
Like that was a huge red flag. Yeah, you guys can probably find that transcript or that the press conference where he said it. I think it was either after the Niners game with Thanksgiving or the Dallas game. It was certainly after a primetime game. I just remember thinking, that's terrible. That's your job. It's literally your job to maximize Jackson Smith and Jigba, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Noah Fant, Colby Parkinson, Ken Walker. It's a lot of skill talent to not be a really dynamic offense. So, yeah, I think they got along fine, but, man, that comment right there, that everyone wrote about that week, that sounded terrible.
Mike, last thing I have for you is, can you paint a picture of maybe the ideal quarterback for what Shane wants to do? Because I guess one of my concerns here in under the idea of keeping Justin Fields is just, one of the things that Justin struggles with is just getting the ball out fast. And, his drop is slower than most and just, quick timing things. And that's kind of what the West Coast offense mostly is. So, I mean, just from what you've seen, both from Russell, from Geno, just what's the ideal quarterback for what Shane Waldron wants to do, and however comfortable you are kind of projecting that on Justin Fields, feel free to share that too.
No, yeah, I'm just like you guys following. You guys are closer to it, but when I saw them hire Shane, I'm like, okay, wait, they keeping Justin, and I think the Bears interviewed Greg Roman, so that made me think they were keeping Justin. I would probably just trade for Drake Maye. I'm a Maye guy over Caleb guy, even though I'm in Pac-12 country. But either way, I do think getting the ball out on time is probably the preferred style of play. I think the good OCs can just work with whatever you got, right? In theory, but that's like get it out on time because it's just so much easier as an OC. Think about it. Like that's why Russ was like a frustrating quarterback at times for some OCs because it's like, cool, dude, you can triple axle and spin and make this play, but it's like, man, that dig was open. If he had just waited for it, he wouldn't have had to do all that. I think Russ Bryce Young is like this too. I think to a lesser extent, both of them are really good problem solvers, but they solve problems that they created. And that's just really frustrating for an OC, any OC, not just Shane. It's like, dude, I designed this play, like the backside dig is open, or the corner was there, like, or the fade was there, like just throw it where it's at. It's so much easier, particularly for your O line too, to block for that. Like knowing, hey, this is a 3-step drop. Our O linemen are blocking like it's a 3-step drop. You sit back there and take 7 and dance. That's your fault if they get called for holding or something. So I think that being on time is key for any OC, but I do think that's probably the bucket that Shane would want his guy to be in. It's like, hey, man, we're designing these plays. You got gifts as a quarterback, whether it's Caleb or Justin. You got gifts. Use them accordingly, but, working within the flow of the offense is much easier to get your guys in rhythm. I think that would be my guess. Because when Russ was at his best with Shane, that's what he was doing. Geno, that's where Geno is all the time. That's why I think him and Geno work so well, because Geno was definitely I'm about to get this ball out to where it's supposed to go through my reads, go where the read takes me, trust the process. They're very big process guys. Drew Lock was even the same way. We saw Drew Lock, get busy in that Eagles game, especially late. So, yeah, I think that would be the preferred style. Which makes it an interesting fit because I watch Fields too. So I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, he don't look like he gets the ball where it's supposed to go. Looks like he's thinking too much. Which I would think you guys are way closer to me, but I would think the hiring Shane would probably be leaning more towards getting a different quarterback. That'd be my thought. Because, you guys know that's what Justin struggles with. And Caleb is probably a little bit better at it. So, or Drake Maye. Like I said, I'm a Maye guy. But, yeah, I would guess on time, trust your keys, read them, progress through as we planned it, and go from there. That would be the ideal guy, I think, for a Shane offense.
Mike, quickly, I was going to ask you what's next for Seattle, given their coaching search, but now I need to know why you're a Drake Maye guy.
I think that Drake is a little bit better at doing what I was just mentioning. Because I went to Washington State, so I watch a lot of Pac-12 football. So I watch a lot of Caleb, and have for as long as he's been in the conference. Haven't watched as much Drake except for like on film going recently. I don't watch him live that much, but when I watch them both, I seem like if I'm a coordinator or a head coach or whoever, I think I can get Drake a little bit more naturally to play on time and on schedule, because the on schedule stuff is just it's more sustainable. I feel like if you can be an off script guy, but you got to use it situationally. That's why Mahomes is so great to me, and Lamar. Like they're really good when they need to be off script. But if the play is open, they'll wait for it. Josh Allen's the same way actually too. Like, hey, I can run. All these guys I mentioned can move, but they're gonna run as like a secondary outlet after they scan what they need. You could see Caleb. Caleb gets himself in trouble a little bit with that, solving problems that he creates. Now that USC offense last year was a joke. Like that offense just had to ask him to be Superman. That was unfair to him. But some of the problems too were his own creation, and he was just so much more athletic than everyone. His arm is so talented that he could buy time back there and make a 50-yard heave down the sideline. But you guys know you can't live off that in the NFL. You just can't. At some point, the other guys are going to be just as athletic as you, and they will catch you and they will hurt you if you do that, and you'll frustrate your teammates by not playing on schedule, yada, yada, yada. So it's splitting hairs a little bit, but I feel like you get very similar arm talent and like IQ stuff with Drake. And I do think you can get him, I think, a little easier to play on schedule if that's what the offense calls for. If you're just trying to go out there and play backyard ball and it's just like YOLO, hey, go take Caleb because he's probably better than Drake. But I do think if your goal is to, hey, man, we're running this. The dig's gonna open up, get it over the linebacker in front of the safety. I feel like I can get Drake to do that a little bit more consistently.
All right, Mike. Good stuff. We really appreciate it, man. Everyone should be following you on Twitter at Mike Dugar. That's Dugar. And you know what? I think some talking points for us here, Mike, because I think the people who listen to this podcast are gonna be thinking about this hire a little bit differently after hearing what you had to say. So we really appreciate it, man.
Oh yeah, no problem. Like you said, no one really likes their OC, right? Unless it's Andy Reid. So it comes with the territory.
Hey, wait, I think
they're mad at Andy right now. Well, yeah, they're blaming everything on Matt. They're not even
yeah, he gave the ball to McCole Hardy. Yeah, no, you're right. No one likes their OC.
No.
So yeah, we'll see. Good luck to Shane out there, though. He's a good mind. So, but yeah, you gotta win. You win, score points. There you go. No one really beef with you.
That's it.
All right, thanks, Mike. Appreciate it, man.
Thanks, Mike.
All right, there's Mike Dugar. Man, I gotta say, help me. Who was the guy from Pittsburgh we had on right after the Bears traded for Chase Claypool?
Cavalli.
That's what that reminded me of.
Mark Cavalli.
And it was like
I think they're a bit different just in terms of like what that player like became and had the history.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I know what you're saying, but yeah.
I'm just talking about in terms of the interview we did right after the acquisition. That's all I'm saying. I wouldn't expect the results to be quite that disastrous. No, I get it.
Like if someone brought you on in I don't know, New Orleans, if they hire Luke Getsy, what are you going to say?
Right. No, I get it. And look, I appreciate everything that Mike had to say about Geno Smith too, but also he's working with Geno Smith the last couple of years. Like there's got to be a level of that too. And any OC is going to look better with a really good quarterback, which is not what Shane Waldron's had. He's had, regressing Russell Wilson that they were willing to trade, and Geno Smith, who, again, as good as he's been in this renaissance he's been on, Geno Smith is still like not a top 10 NFL quarterback. So I still think the hire makes a lot of sense for what the Bears are trying to do here, threading the needle between their two big quarterback options that they have to make a decision on here in the coming months.
That's a great way to put it because both are on the table. And the table we know exists for Matt Eberflus. Mike actually had this in one of his columns. I want to think it was at the end of last year when Geno Smith had his breakout year. Again, led the league in completion percentage, career highs in passing yards, career highs in touchdown passes, and I think passer rating. So, Mike Sando, friend of the show, the Athletics national writer, does those QB tiers, right? Mm-hmm. So in 2021, he was in tier 3 at number. Sorry. Let me get this right. In 2021, he was in tier 5, the only quarterback in tier 5. After 2022, he jumped up to tier 3 at number 20. That jump was the largest jump that year and the third largest jump in the history of Sando's tiers project. So there was significant improvements made by Geno Smith. And in 2022, if I got these years right, I'm messing up these years. I know I am. He was just ahead. Geno Smith was just ahead of number 21, Justin Fields in tier 3. So,
well, you're
stuff to think about.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking after the good season Geno Smith had last year, going into this.
Yes. So
the last
2021 he was 2021 he was in the tier 5 by himself. 2022 he moves up to tier 3 because of the success.
Yeah.
The years are different. I got the years of the actual survey wrong here, but just in terms of the production, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I got you.
I hope I know what you're saying. I don't even know what I'm saying. There was improvement there, Adam Hoge. I know it because the numbers show it.
2022 was his breakout year, and it was after that breakout year that he made that jump from tier 5 to tier 3.
Yes, in the 2023 QB tier survey.
There you go, which was like last
Boom.
summer.
Yes.
We got you. So look, look, the point of this short little pod today was to have somebody on from Seattle who knew the situation well and give an informed view on the whole thing, because Mike has covered Shane Waldron the last 3 years. So, now it's up to you guys, the listener, the viewer, to take that information and project it to what the Bears have. We have more,
See, the
plenty of
difference
time this offseason.
between this interview, sorry, now you got me on Kabali again. The difference between Kabali, he said that was not going to work from the start with Chase Claypool. He called it from the get-go. This is going to be a bust move. Chase Claypool was a bust pick. This is not going to work out for the Bears. Thank you for the second-round pick. Steelers could not be more grateful.
You're right.
This interview, there was a bit more optimism to go with the pessimism.
That's fair. I still feel like it's throwing a little cold water on the hire that so far this news is, as we're recording this, about 8 hours old, and it's been mostly viewed as a home run hire. Also, some of what we've heard from Seattle too, which I think is interesting information to hear for fans that care about press conferences and stuff. Apparently, Shane Waldron doesn't say much. Apparently, he's pretty dry in his press conferences, and you're not going to get much out of those. That's just the word that's coming out of Seattle on that. I don't know. That doesn't necessarily matter, but always seems to enter the conversation here in Chicago somewhere or the other.
Beyond the pop can bit that Luke Getsy had going forever, that one can of squirt kind of just stayed up there all year long, by the way. That was all fun and games. But if you go look back at some of those press conferences, he said a lot of stuff, kind of like how Matt Nagy would say a lot of stuff. But when you look back at it, there's not a lot there.
Right.
Luke Getsy became very good at saying nothing.
Many words, little substance. Yeah, I think that's fair. So again, I don't know how much that really matters or whatever, but it does, as Mike said at the end, you got to win games. And that little issue becomes more of an issue when you're not winning games. Then that's when that becomes a problem. If you're winning games, no one cares. Like Bill Belichick for years and years and years. They're winning, fine. So there you go. All right, any other final thoughts? We obviously have plenty more opportunities here to talk more about this hire coming up.
I think some readers, some listeners, I don't know what you talked about in CHGO, or too many people are making too many connections between Shane Waldron and the QB collective.
Yes.
And the history of Caleb Williams being there and other young quarterbacks. If anything, that just enhances draft evaluations to me, having that experience. Who else is involved in that? Mike Shanahan, Kyle Shanahan, Mike McDaniel, Sean McVay. Every single person from that tree we're talking about. Even, Stefanski, who's, part of that tree through Gary Kubiak. Mm-hmm. They all go there. They're all part of that QB collective. So a lot of input from a lot of great coaches, obviously, with that collective they have going on. So don't read too much into the tie.
Well, and I didn't know this until someone brought it up, but apparently you go to that website and Justin Fields is on the homepage. So again, I don't. In fact, I think this is the one hire that, above all other options, that maybe was most down the middle when it becomes, on the idea of, would this be a tell on the quarterback decision? I don't think it's a tell either way.
Greg Roman would be a tell.
Greg Roman would
be a tell.
Right. Most of the other guys they interviewed were in the middle, and I think specifically Shane Waldron, you can go either way here. Now, that being said, I'm sure they talked in their interviews about maybe Shane Waldron's preference, or what they think he can do, or what he thinks he can do with both of these quarterbacks, and maybe in their hearts or their brains or whatever that led them thinking one way or the other. But we're not going to have that information. We're not going to know that in the meantime. So interesting hire. In my opinion, a good hire, but we've also been down this road with rotating OCs anywhere between 1 and 3 years.
I just think
happens here in Chicago.
Comparing, it happens a lot. If you're just comparing and contrasting between Waldron and Luke Getsy, to me, it's the play calling experience that stands out. And I like that he has history in Los Angeles. When things got started with Jared Goff, right? Forget the Geno Smith turnaround for a little bit. Like, how about the Jared Goff turnaround? And I get it that he started off as the tight ends coach there, but by the second year there in Los Angeles, he was the passing game coordinator. And in that second year, Jared Goff set career highs that are still valid to this day, even with what's going on in Detroit. So, like, that to me is very appealing, especially if you can compare and contrast it to what the Bears just had in Luke Getsy, who had no experience calling plays at this level and who had only had a reference point of Aaron Rodgers and his success.
Yeah. So there you go. Mike Dugar, who covers the Seattle Seahawks for The Athletic. TheAthletic.com/Hoge Jahns is where you go to subscribe. We did have a long, very long Shane Waldron show on CHGO today. If you want to check that out, all CHGO on YouTube channel and allchgo.com. So plenty of coverage on this big hire. And of course, Johnsy and Fishbane broke it down as well. You can follow us on Twitter at Hoge and Jahns, and individually at Adam Hoge, at Adam Jahns. And we're back tomorrow. We got a big show tomorrow because our guy Dane Brugler's coming on.
Ooh. Wonder what he thinks about this.
Yeah, he had a little mock draft last week with a certain quarterback, also available on The Athletic. Dane's great. And obviously last year when the Bears had the number 1 pick, we had Dane on a lot. That's the plan this year as well. So Dane Brugler, everyone always loves when Dane comes on. That's what's happening on tomorrow's episode, Tuesday morning, when we'll record that. So a little bonus action here today as we cover the hiring of the Bears' new offensive coordinator. But for now, we'll say goodbye, and we'll be back with Dane Brugler tomorrow.
See ya.